you very much. What a privilege it is to be here. And so my name is Eamon Fullalove. Can you believe that's my surname? I didn't change it when I moved to Totnes. If anyone's been to Totnes, you know what I'm talking about. It is a real privilege. And when David asked me to speak way back on Monday, my brain went, shut the front door. He's asking me to speak. What am I going to talk about? And I externally said very calmly, of course, I'd love to speak. And then had a 4-hour drive back to Totnes, in which my internal dialogue just went utterly apeshit and would not shut up. Initially, I planned a talk that was so moving that people would weep. There would be a standing ovation at the end. The blind would be cured. People would be carried out of here, prostrate. And then I caught my ego, and it's like, shut up, really, shut up. And then I planned a talk because I work in education. This is what I actually do for a living. I stand up in front of 200 young people in schools and I talk about bullying and violence and what drives you. And any day I would take 200 kids from a tough estate over you lot. I'm way more nervous than when I do my normal job. And I was reading the notes to prepare and it said, do not do your usual talk. Like, what does that mean? So no slides, no props. None of the business that I use, none of the gags that I use with kids, because you just talk about bums and tits and they just laugh their heads off. So I'm not going to do that.
So do we.
Yeah, exactly. And then I caught myself, and someone gave it a brilliant term once called thinking about your thinking. I caught my brain doing its thing. And one of the distinctions that I do with young people and with teachers, I talk about something called your magic show. So when you meet someone, you do your magic show, you do your tricks. I cook for you, I make you laugh a little bit, I'll be a bit cheeky and whatever. Everyone has their own bag of tricks. And like the magicians of Victorian age, you roll into town, you get your cart out, you do your tricks. It's like when you meet with your loved one, you do all your stuff and you tell them your secrets. And like with the magicians of old, when you've done your tricks or people start to work out how you do your tricks, people often would pack up and move to the next town, or you leave your relationship, or you say, this job doesn't work for me. And I caught myself about to do my magic show about my magic show. I caught my ego building a talk that would have me look great in front of you. It would have me do all my tricks. You would love me. And then I stopped. And I thought, that's not going to cut it. And it's not what I want to do, and it's not what I want to leave you with. And when I prepare to go on stage with young people, I make sure that that ego is out of the way, because young people are way more brutal than you're going to be. If you run your stuff, or you're full of shit, or you're inauthentic, or whatever, young people just switch off. So that's what I'm going to do with you guys. I'm just going to stand here and be myself, and know that actually that's fine, and it's enough. And I'm not going to run my magic show. I'm just going to tell you what I do, and what I've found about education and this passion that I have for education, which is driving me to places I never thought it would. So a little bit about myself. As Anna, I couldn't be more proud than watching Anna give her talk. I was her head chef. I was the head chef at 15. I was one of those people who had an incredible ricochet of events that took me to be the head chef at 15. And I remember sitting in the office with Jamie, and it was about to start. We'd been there for 6 months, and we'd selected the students, and no one knew that I had never made pasta, ever. I didn't know how to make a risotto. I had no idea about Italian food, and I was the head chef. So what I did, what you always do when when you realise that you can't do what you're meant to be doing and no one knows, I shut up and I hope for the best. And after a week of hoping for the best, shutting up, I actually just said, look, Jamie, you have got the wrong man. I'm not the bloke you want. I don't know anything about Italian food. You want me to run an Italian restaurant? And he said, you are the right person, because who you are and your character is what we need. He said, I can teach you to cook, but I can't teach you to be a leader. That phrase is going to be a theme in this talk. I now work in education through a series of events after leaving 15, a phone call. I'm sure all of you know when you have that phone call and it's an opportunity. Someone said, look, I know what you did at 15. I know your background in personal development. Do you want to come and work with kids? That opportunity was put right in front of me and I took it. It was an incredible opportunity. And it has led me to some incredible places. I'm just going to check my notes, because I actually haven't done this talk yet. So what I do in schools is I build and I run experiences, because there are certain things that you cannot teach. You can't teach leadership. I can't draw you a graph of how to be a great leader. I can't explain to you how to develop strong character traits, how to keep going when you get stuck, when you get to the edge of your skill set. How do you explain to someone, well, you've got to leap, or they have to do it. You can't read a book about how to ride a bike. You've got to get on a bike, fall off, get on, fall off, like that. So I build experiences within education that have young people develop leadership skills or develop positive attributes or just be bigger and better than they can be. But like all things, to give a talk about experiential learning would be a little bit two-dimensional because it's one of those things, you've got to experience it. So I'm going to do an exercise with you now, something that I do with young people in schools. So you need to take your recycled paper notebooks and your birchwood pens and put them on the floor and your laptops and whatever it is you've got, and take everything off your lap until you're just completely relaxed and comfortable where you're sat. Put your soy latte on the floor. And I want you to shut your eyes. And I'll know if you're cheating. Shut your eyes. And I want you to imagine yourself around the age of 12. Roughly when you get out of primary school, and maybe you went to secondary school, if that was the education you had. I can see myself. I want you to see yourself. You are standing in front of your 11, 12-year-old self. I've got grey shorts on, socks. I had these really cool red sandals that I thought were excellent. I've got my school shirt on. I look like Buster because, obviously, loads of freckles. So you're standing now right in front of your 12-year-old self. And what piece of advice would you give yourself? Because it was a struggle for some. I had issues. I wet the bed. I was very uncomfortable with my body when I was a little kid. My dad left when I was 3, so I had a lot of issues. I was quite a troubled 12-year-old. So standing in front of your 12-year-old self, what piece of advice would you give that child right now? Now open your eyes. My advice to myself back then is don't worry. It all turns out. Because I worried a hell of a lot when I was 12. And answer me this question. Is that advice still pertinent? Is that advice you should be giving yourself right now? Because one thing I've learned about working with young people is we treat young people so well in our lives. We worry about what they eat. We worry about who they hang out with. Are they learning enough? Have they got the right clothes? And then we often don't treat ourselves that well. And something I've seen just from preparing for this talk was I could actually treat myself a lot better. I could treat myself as well as I treat my children. And it would make a huge difference. I think that we look after our children in a great way. We send them to school, we give them great educations. But we don't expose them to some of the things that we've exposed each other to in here. I'm so excited that the Teen Do Lectures is going to happen. The teenagers need to know that adults are having these conversations. A lot of teenagers I talk to think that we think we've messed up the world and we're not prepared to do anything about it. They don't know that there are lots of people getting together and having these awesome conversations. We're not talking to young people and saying, what is your life for? What would you like to do that will make this difference in the world? It seems to be that we think, well, we'll wait till kids get out of school and then they'll kind of work it out, or then we'll have those conversations. How different would your education or my education be if you thought about it whilst at school? It would ground your education. It would give you a context for being at school that would be supremely powerful. So that's what I do in schools. One of the things I do is I run a day called A to B, which is really about the journey of life. You know, where are you at? Where do you want to be? We talk about what stops you getting the most out of life. Why do you want to do things to fit in? There are young people who do things and let other young people do things to them that they shouldn't, but they do it in order to fit in. Why do we put up, and young people have really strong magic shows. They put up a front that isn't actually authentic to who they are. And we've given them these incredible tools to do it. The selfie, the Facebook, Instagram. And that disconnect, I was really listening this morning to some of the issues that we have. Issues with energy efficiency, issues with, there is a disconnect with young people to the world around them. They actually think, well, it's not my job to fix it, or I can't do anything to fix it. And yet the people who have the thinking to solve some of the issues that we face in this world are sitting in school. And no one's having this conversation with them. No one's saying, do you know what, you guys, you're the answer. And how can we support you to come up with these answers? So that's something that I do. I go into schools and I talk to young people and I get them looking at what stops them being themselves. And then I run projects. So they actually have an experience of being a leader. So one of the projects that I've been running is getting 15-year-olds to design school clubs about their passion. And I'll go in with an idea of what I think they should do, and then they come back with the most incredible things. Free running clubs, body art clubs, tattoo clubs, art clubs, rugby clubs, girls rugby clubs, you name it. And then I work with a school, and they turn those into after-school clubs, and they lead them to year 7. So you have 15-year-olds leading after-school clubs to 12-year-olds. And that's just a vehicle. Whilst they're busy doing it, what they're really learning are incredible skills. They're learning leadership. They're learning compassion for teachers. The amount of young people who say, oh my God, they're just utter hard work. How on earth, how am I meant to do this? I prepared all this work, and then they just won't listen. And then they have those moments and they go, oh yeah, that's me. And you can see all these teachers going, yeah, man, wicked. Once they've done that for a term, because when I was talking to Stella about this, she said, how do you get experience when no one will trust you because you don't have any experience? That's one way I do it. I've worked in some schools where people have set up bike clubs. And then you get people to come and look at them from the industry. And you're more likely to hire someone who's run a club in a school for a whole term to a load of year 7s than someone who's just given you a CV. We run summer camps for kids in transition. So when kids come from primary school to secondary school, they do a little carousel with all these workshops led by the older school, which just looks like fun. But what it really does is remove all the fear, the younger kids working with the older kids. And the last project I did, which is actually the project that got me into this mess of standing on stage talking to you, I was having dinner with David and Claire, and he said, what have you been up to? And I told them about this school called Sands, which is now where Tessa is going to pack up and move to. Once she heard that they have no uniform, the students vote what they're going to learn. They're in charge of all the school finances. They regulate what teachers teach them. They pick their subjects. It is the most incredible school called Sands in North Devon. So I met the head of Sands, and it was one of those beautiful bromance moments. I said to Christiane, I really want to be friends with that guy. It was so cringeworthy. And it's like falling in love. I sort of said, can I meet you? And then we had a chat, and then we just fell in love. And so Sands is a free school. It's a fee-paying free school. It's a democratic school. And I had to go in and pitch to these kids. Now, I'm used to working with kids from tough estates, and there's certain things you can do. You can raise your voice. You can say, look this way, and they all look. And I walked into Sands, and I had a meeting with 40 of these kids, and none of the rules that work in school work with these guys. 3 minutes into the meeting, 5 of them just went, this isn't for me. See you later. 2 of them said, I'm just going outside. I've got some skating to do. It's like, what? And then we had this incredible conversation. I said, look, I've got 3 ideas, 3 projects I want to pitch to you as a school. One, that we set up a pop-up restaurant in your school. And I'll come in and I'll train you to be chefs, but you are going to make everything. You're going to make the furniture, you're going to make the plates, you're going to write drama, theatre, music, and we're going to turn the school into a pop-up restaurant for 3 nights. The second idea is to launch a TV station that comes out of their school, which are information programs that they write about whatever they want to write, and we put them up on the net. And then the last one, which is what I'm most excited about, is that I train a group of these students to come and do what I do in schools. Because as soon as you have young people talking to young people, it's completely different. I'm just a dude with white hair, whatever. When young people talk to young people, they have way less agenda, and they listen completely differently. So I pitched these 3 ideas, and I said, which one do you want? They went, all of them. I was like, brilliant. And then someone said, we haven't got any money. And then they had this really extraordinary conversation as a group of students who are responsible for their own education. And they looked at the finances and said, look, we can afford a bit of this and then that. And then someone said, well, why don't we charge tickets? And we'll make some money out of the restaurant and it will pay for this. And then we can pay for you to do the other projects. So that's what we did. So 2 months ago, we ran 3 nights. They decided to call it the elephant in the room because they built a giant elephant outside their school. And they wanted to talk about the fact that no one talks about this in schools, so they called the restaurant the elephant in the room. They made half the plates in pottery. They wrote sketches. They wrote stand-up comedy. They wrote music that they then performed for the guests. And I trained them in cookery. I taught them to make tortellini and risotto, and it was incredible. And one by one, they buckled and they got to the edge of their abilities and they melted down, and then we picked them up and we coached them. And afterwards, about a week afterwards, I saw the head, and he said the feedback had nothing to do with food. Not one of them said, what I got out of it was I learned to make tortellini or bread or whatever. They all spoke about how they'd grown as a person, how they'd worked as a team, how they got to the limit, how they wanted to quit and then they didn't. But we knew that it was a total success. And on the last night, this is the total high point for me, one of the mums came in and she was pretty sloshed. And we were all standing in the kitchen and we were washing up, and there's a huge dining room at Sands. And she's quite close. You know, when someone's drunk and you're not, they're about that far away. And her daughter's called Bibi, and they run a hotel, and so she's sort of grown up in the world of hotel and whatever, and Bibi was just off the hook. She was so amazing. She took on running the restaurant, she got all the laundry for it, she sat guests, she was just brilliant. So her mum's up here telling me, you know, how much her daughter's got from it, and over her shoulder, Bibi is climbing on a table with a little mini-rig speaker with some techno blaring going, yeah! And her mum's going, and she's got so much from it. She's really grown as a person. And they're all in the back going, yeah! Dancing on tables. And it was just awesome. So that's what I do. I started a company called Ignite Education. And the strapline, and I think every time I say it, it makes me cry and that's how I knew that I'd got the right strapline, and how I knew that this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. Because chefing is incredible, and I have done it for years, and I've done it well, and I've done it all over the world, but it's really just my magic show. What really lights me up is young people. And so my company's called Ignite Education, and I don't have a strapline, but I tell people that my job, our job, is to light fires in young people that we can't put out. Our job is just to light a fire. Their job is to go out there and burn it down and go berserk and run this world for us. All we can do is light that fire. Thank you.